So, functionalism, so it's an ideology which is focusing on understanding the function of the cultural traits and institutions. Previously, we have studied classical evolutionism. So, their idea is to understand how cultures and societies evolved over a period of time, right? Then came diffusionists. So, what is their idea? So, in diffusionism, what did we study? How? So, their understanding is that, see, evolution has happened, but they did not accept the evolutionism. That means all the cultures and societies evolved in unilinear fashion, stage by stage, as said by those people. So they did not agree with this. Rather, they said evolution is happening, but along with that, the diffusion also happens. They believe that man is not inventive equally everywhere, so that's why they imitate what has already been produced and they focus more on copying things. So, what did they say? So, the role of anthropologist is to understand how the traits diffuse. And some people said that the role of anthropologist is to understand by mapping the areas where the traits are diffused rather than understanding how the path. So, in the first British diffusionist anthropologist, what did they say? You should find the path. They did not say why the diffusion has happened or how the diffusion has happened. So, in the second, they try to focus on how the diffusion has happened. They try to see the criteria of number, the criteria of form. So, they try to see that and they try to talk about how the diffusion or when the diffusion has happened, how long. Because based on the area, so they talked about the American diffusionists talked about the culture area, age area concept, right? So there through that they want to say how long back the particular trait has been diffused, right? So these things we have studied in the past thoughts, right? And we have seen historical particularism of Franz Boas. So in there also, Franz Boas is influenced both by diffusionism and in the beginning he was influenced by geographical determinism. So when he started doing work among the Eskimos, then he observed that within the same geography there are multiple cultures. So henceforth he gave up his thought that geography will determine the culture, and then later on he brought in the field work, and through the field work he got to understand that every culture is influenced by its history. Henceforth you should not judge one culture from others' values, and he gave the concept of cultural relativism as well, right? So these are his thoughts on the culture and its growth and its development. So next comes other set of school, that is functionalism. So functionalism here, what they emphasize is that you see all the previous schools, where are they focusing? All the previous schools are focusing. Classical evolutionists, they talked about how things are in the past and how it evolved over a period of time, from savagery to barbarism to civilization. This is classical evolutionists. And then you see diffusionists, they said things originated in Egypt and that spread to other parts of the world, sun god concept and all other aspects. Franz Boas also said that every culture is influenced by its history. Along with history, what other things do influence culture? One is history or historical connections. Others, the environment they live in, right? We have studied it, right? Psychological conditions and environmental conditions, historical connections, all these influence culture. In all these three, what common you notice is that they are trying to understand the past as well. But when it comes to functionalists, what they say is that you don't have proper data, you don't have proper evidence of the past. So, without having correct evidence, correct findings of the past, you cannot make a proper conclusion. Henceforth, they ask you to give up this diachronic approach. Diachronic approach means studying in comparison to the past. So give up this diachronic approach and move towards the synchronic approach. Synchronic means studying what is present here and now instead of focusing on the past. This approach is diachronic approach. This is synchronic approach. Okay, this is synchronic approach. So there has been shift from diachronic to synchronic. So what they want you to study is that instead of focusing on how they have come, from where they have come, rather try to focus on present and try to understand what purpose it is solving. So this school has come with this ideology that it want to make anthropology a science. So it want to have data backed conclusions. So in order to have clear data backed science, then you should study the current, because if you want to look at the past you cannot make any conclusions, right? Now, so you got to know that functionalism is an ideology which is trying to understand the functions that is being served by cultures and societies. So there are two schools within the functionalism. One is biocultural functionalism, by Malinowski, and other is structural functionalism by Radcliffe Brown. Okay, so functionalism has got two schools. Okay, so then moving further, So, as we do in every anthropological thought, we need to know the introduction, then historical background, meaning, basic premises, approaches or methodology, then individual scholars, their limitations, then the conclusion. So, here introduction is that functionalism evolved in reaction to the methodology that is used by the past anthropological thoughts or theories or the scholars, that they were dependent upon the historical past which did not give right evidence, and there is no scientific proof to talk things in detail. Okay, so you don't have the scientific proof for it, right? So in reaction to the past thoughts and their approaches, it evolved, and here functionalism emphasizes on the field work. Okay, so that is the reaction in which it has come. It doesn't want to you to follow the diachronic approach, rather the synchronic approach. Okay, so historical background is that these people were influenced by sociologists. Emile Durkheim. Emile Durkheim has compared the society to an organ, oh sorry, an organism. So he has compared it. Being influenced from there, you notice Malinowski and Ratcliffe Brown tries to understand the society and culture. So that is the historical background, and the meaning, you know, that trying to functionalism tends to understand what functions the culture and society is serving today in today's context. So rather than focusing on the historical past of the cultural traits and institutions. So then you have approaches or methodology. I told you they follow synchronic approach. Previously, the approach was diachronic in nature, and what methods they employ in studying? They employ fieldwork method. They go there, they participate in the field, they understand their language, they study the local history, they stay with the people, they understand their viewpoints, they make an ethnography. So through that, they tend to give some conclusions. So this is the methodology. Then you have individual scholars. Okay. So what is the historical background? Influence, right? So comparison of organism and society was done by Emile Durkheim. Okay, and from there, these people were also influenced, and they tried to use that same analogy of organism to society. They use the same analogy to understand the culture and society. So just note it down. I'll dictate. Okay. So first, introduction, what you'll write. Functionalism in anthropology emerged. Functionalism in anthropology emerged as a reaction. Emerged as a reaction to evolutionary and diffusionist theories. Reaction. Functionalism in anthropology emerged as a reaction to evolutionary theory and diffusionist theories. Focusing on how focusing on how cultural institutions focusing on how cultural institutions function, how cultural institutions function to maintain societal stability. Okay, so this is the introduction, and the historical background is, as I told you, they were influenced by French sociologist Emile Durkheim, who says that there is similarity between an organism and society. Just like organism has got parts, okay, even society has got it, and he tried to show that analogy. So the same analogy has been used. They too got influenced by them, and they talked about the stability that is present in the culture and society. How these things are maintaining the stability. How the society is being continued from one generation to another. Society is nothing but combination of institutions, combination of multiple cultural traits. How these traits are being continued, how are they being stable? So they try to understand. So their emphasis is on the function and understanding the societal stability. So they were influenced by Emile Durkheim, and further they try to talk about it. So we'll understand what they have talked in detail, but you know the historical background. This analogy of an organism to society. So what are the common premises? Yesterday we tried to understand them, right? What are the premises? They try to understand society and culture as a system. Just like organic system. So within the organic system, you have parts, various parts. So within the society also, you have parts. Here, all the parts are interrelated. Here also, all the parts are interrelated. Any change in one part will lead to the change in functioning of all other parts, right? In a similar manner, here also within the cultural system, you notice change in one part will lead to the will lead to the change in all other parts of the cultural system. So just like the changes. So heart, body, heart, mind have a direct connection. How? Because heart supplies blood. So without the supply of blood, no other part can function properly. You take respiratory system. Okay, so one is connected to the other. One organ is connected to the other, and any problem in one part will lead to the problem in functioning of the other. So they assume this, that just like organic system, they have that analogy that is given by Emile Durkheim. They use the same analogy and they said it has got parts and each part is related to other and they do some function. So every part does some function. Okay, every part will do some function. That is, in society we call it activity, which give rise to, every part will do something which is called as activity, giving rise to some function. So there also a part will do some activity that is called as function, right? So if you disturb one, it will disturb the other. This is the common basic premises. So they try to see that similarity of organism to human culture system or social system, and they believe that there are parts and these parts do some activity which give rise to function, and these parts are related to one another. Change in one part will lead to the change in other. Clear? Clear with basic premise? Right. Hmm? No, no, that's intentional. Uh, okay, so we have seen the introduction, historical background, then basic premises. Schools of functionalism, you have two schools. Malinowski's school, which is also known as biocultural functionalism, and then you have Radcliffe Brown's structural functional approach. So their methodology, I told you previously, the previously evolutionist, diffusionist, they were dependent on the historical past and its evidences, which were not having the proof of evidence. Okay, so you cannot verify them. How can you verify whatever they are showing, whether it's true or not? So instead of wasting time in gathering proofs for the past, rather focus on the present and tend to study what is existing now and see what function they are serving and try to understand how the stability is maintained in the society and culture. So their approach is synchronic approach, trying to study the existing things currently as and now rather than focusing on the past. The method they have used is field work method, and Malinowski is the one who has set the standards for field work by introducing participant observation technique. That we'll be studying again. But the method that they have used is fieldwork method. Right? This is with respect to approach. Okay. So Bronislaw Malinowski, as I told you in the previous class, he belongs to Poland. So he studied from Krakow University. Then he moved to Leipzig University, now it's London University. So there he initially took chemistry, then moved to economics. After that, he went to London School of Economics. Okay. After that, he went to London School of Economics. In London School of Economics, under the influence of James Fraser, actually, even before going to London School of Economics and taking anthropology there, he studied James Fraser book known as Golden Book. So being inspired from this book, he wanted to move towards anthropology. So he went there in London School of Economics. So there is socio-cultural anthropology which was prevailing there. Okay. So in the socio-cultural anthropology, the famous people were Seligman, James Fraser, and there were other people, W.H.R. Rivers and A.C. Harden. So under these people, he got trained in anthropology, and he was sent on an expedition to Australia. That was between 1914 to 1918. You have World War I. During this period, there was World War I going, and he was in Australia. And we have seen he is a citizen of Poland, so which was part of Austro-Hungarian territory. So this is enemy country of Britain. So Malinowski has become the enemy alien. So enemy aliens are detained during the wars. So now, you know, Malinowski was in Australia. So he didn't understand what to do. However, with the support of the Britain anthropologists, because all his teachers or guides belong to Britain, so they were able to help him that okay, he can do some work over there, but he cannot move out of particular territory. Right. So he got stuck in those areas of Australia, Papua New Guinea, and the small islands. So he had to spend long periods over there. So during this process, he has come up with something known as participant observation technique. and the importance of fieldwork, because he has studied some tribes through indirect evidences which he felt that did not give the right information, or it did not give the exact picture of what is there in reality. So he had to participate among them, be among them, and stay, understand their language, learn their language, become part of them, become part of their culture. Then you try to mention things about them, then you will get the real picture of that particular tribe. So this is what he understood during this period. Okay, so initially he doesn't belong to anthropology. He was doing his PhD in chemistry and economics. Then later on he moved to anthropology because he was influenced by the book that is written by James Fraser, Golden Buff, and from there he came to anthropology, and he went on expedition. There most of his works has come out. So the first work in Australia, what was the first work? First, where did he go? He went to first he went to Australia, right? So in Australia, what did he observe at the first point? We have done this yesterday and I have discussed in detail. So you shouldn't forget. Yesterday I told you the family concept. He has rejected the group marriages, the concept of group marriages which were given by L.H. Morgan, right? So the family among the Australian Aborigines was the work, and in that work, he has refuted what has been said by L.H. Morgan. Just at this point in your question, do contemporary anthropologists accept the promiscuity as the earliest stage of marriage? And what are the views of Ember and Ember? Right, this was the question. So try to add this point over there. Can't you write on your own? Just you need to know the work, the family among Australian Aborigines. Aboriginals. AB. right? So that was his first finding from the Australia itself. And then he goes to Milo people, right? In 1914, he studies those people. What he observes there is that indirect evidences are not giving the real picture. So in 1913, he went to Australia, and the family among the Australian aborigines is the work. So in this work, he has refuted the concept of group marriages as the earliest. Okay, and 1914, he conducted field work for 3 months. For 3 months, he conducted field work among the Milo people. So he has written the work The Natives of Milo. But he was not satisfied because of the deficiencies of indirect research. Used indirect researchers, what they used to do, they used to use trade languages, and they used to take help of missionaries. Through that help, they used to do the field work. Being dissatisfied with this indirect research, he moved towards the development of participant observation. Participant observation is a technique where the person himself involves in the field work, where he tries to understand the history of the people, he learns their language, knows them well, participate in their cultural activities, and become one member among the but of that culture, and then try to talk about it. That is participant observation. So living among the people rather than European settlements. So there will be European settlements also in that area. So he'll go and live along with them. And he, in 1915 to 18, during this time, he was among the Tobrian Islanders. 1915 to 1918, he was among the Tobriand Islands. So here he has done the field work. So at this point of time, he has learned the local Kiri Wan WINA Kiriwana sorry Kiriwana Kirivina language. So he has learned the local language, and he has become member of that community, and then he draw the direct ethnographic insight. Kirivina. So now he tried to understand their genealogies, okay, their texts, maps, sketches. He used sketches, maps, texts, vernacular texts, and daily activities. Whatever that is there, he collected. So this was the starting of his field work. right? The beginning of fieldwork. So after the fieldwork in 1922, the first major work of Malinowski got published. That is Organauts of Western Pacific. So whatever the fieldwork that he has done from 1915 to 18, so he tried to put that in different works, and here this Organauts of Western Pacific tries to mark the landmark study of colouring. Yeah. So what is colouring? It is a ceremonial exchange of shell valuables. Okay. So we'll try to study this in detail in economic anthropology. Now don't bother. So colouring is nothing but where he stayed, there were multiple islands. Okay. So in these islands, what used to happen is that there is exchange of two items, that is Solua and Mawal. So Solua means it's a red necklace made of beads, and Mawali means it's a white armband. Okay. So necklace is exchanged in clockwise direction, armband is exchanged. So necklace is going in this direction and armband is going anti-clockwise direction. So here this is nothing but a ceremonial exchange. During this ceremonial exchange, what people do is they build canoes, they come together, they perform magic rituals, and the chief will be heading that voyage. And in that, most of the people involved are men. Okay, so they'll go to other island, they'll give this, and they'll collect the others. Okay, so they'll give the necklace, and other person will be giving the shells. So this exchange continues. Okay, it serves multiple functions, that is improving the social status, building the alliances, at the same time most importantly the cooperation during the crisis, right? So this exchange is not mere materialistic, rather it has the social connotations, which shows that they build strong relationships and it has got some value. Okay, so here Malinowski, through this work, he tries to highlight that whatever the beliefs that were there by the Western countries or the Western anthropologists, that these people's economy doesn't show any rationality, the mere wastage of resources being done. So going thousands of miles just to exchange the shells doesn't make any sense. But when Malinowski has studied, he tried to highlight that it is not just materialistic in nature, rather it is also social, cultural, which is serving the multiple purpose. That is building the relationships, alliances, status, improving the status of the individual, power, okay, meeting the crisis situations, all these aspects. So in the same work, he has also found that Tobriand islanders are having social organization which is matrilineal in nature, and this matrilineal influences the property inheritance, that is properties transferred through the female line and the power rests with the mother's brother. So you need to understand the difference here. Matrilineal and matriarchy are not the same. Matrilineal is not equal to matriarchy. Archy means power, right? Lineage means lineage. So through which the inheritance or the rights are transferred. So these two are not same. So if the lineage, that means the rights are transferred from mother to daughter, then that is matrilineal. And if the power is also with the female itself, with the mother itself, then that becomes matriarchy. But here what you notice, the power is with the mother's brother. And not the mother herself. So matrilineal and matriarchy are not the same. So just have that clarity. Don't try to use the terms interchangeably. Okay. So what he has observed among the Tobria and islanders is that, so one thing he has observed this ceremonial exchange collaring, and next thing he has observed the social organization among them, that is matrilineal in nature, where the property inheritance is guided by the matrilineal, and the political power and authority structures also he has studied. There he saw that the power is with the mother's brother and he will be taking all the decisions, and he has observed that the magic, myth and rituals play an important role in their economic activities, that is agriculture, fishing and the exchange system. So these are the things he has observed in the Argonauts of Western Pacific, and he saw the social control, how the social control is established. The social control there you see is established not through the centralized institutions, rather decentralized and socially obliged. Okay, so it is not based on formal institutions. There are no formal institutions. The social control is based upon the customs. It is based upon the, yeah, customs, taboos, and the community surveillance. That means I told you that public opinion will matter. It is based upon the reciprocity. If you do anything wrong, people won't exchange things with you. So you are afraid that, okay, tomorrow you cannot exchange things. That's why you will maintain that law and order. Okay, so he tried to understand how the law and order was maintained in the past without the formalized institutions, which he got to understand that the social control mechanisms function without any formal legal institutions through the socially controlled mechanisms. So the socially controlled mechanisms are nothing but customs, taboos, and the community surveillance. So after this work in 1926, he has written one more work, that is Crime and Custom in Savage Society. Okay, so in this work, the same thing what we have observed, that how law functions in stateless societies. He says that there is no centralized authority, but still you will have law and order. How? It is because of kinship, reciprocity, and shame. These act as the enforcement mechanisms. So law is based on the customary practice rather than the imposed rules. Public opinion, magical sanctions, and the social exclusion, these will act as the law. So that we have discussed, right? So I'll give you the notes, don't worry, but try to understand what he's trying to say. how law exists even without the formal legal institutions. How does they exist? Based on the social obligations, magical sanctions, public opinion, social exclusion, reciprocity, kinship, shame. So these are the things which are present in the customs. So these customary practices will lead to the law and order rather than the imposed rules. There is no imposed rules. Okay. Then next work is sex and repression in savage society. So this is after the work, crime and custom in savage society, which is in 1926. So here actually he tries to talk about incest taboo, the concept. See, what is incest taboo? Incest means having sexual relations within the family. Okay. Incest means having sexual. Taboo means something which is prevented from doing. Okay. So that means incest taboo means preventing the sexual relationships within the family. So how did this come and what are the reasons? These were explained by various anthropologists. Okay. So Oedipus myth, there is a myth known as Oedipus myth. So in which Oedipus is the head of the family and the kind of system that was present was patriarchal in nature, okay, and patrilineal in nature. So this is patriarchal and patrilineal. Here Oedipus will keep all the women to himself and he won't let the sons or the other men to access, okay, he won't let his children to access to the woman, because of which children develops grudge and kills the Oedipus, okay, and after a point of time they develop guilt among themselves and they will try to establish a flag as a symbol and they worship it. That means when you worship an object which we have studied, that is nothing but this is totem, and the totemism as a concept according to Sigmund Freud, who has explained this Oedipus myth. The person who has given this is Sigmund Freud. Yeah, Oedipus myth was given by him. So he says that the incest taboo is psychological because now you see that because of this they don't have sexual relationship within themselves. Now they, after establishing totem, they marry outside the totem. They establish exogamy. So this is the reason for incest taboo. But this Sigmund Freud's explanation has been critiqued by Malinowski. In Tobriand Islanders, who is exerting the disciplinary power? Who is exerting? Uncle is exerting, not the father. Right? Authority is held with the maternal uncles. So the child grown up without any tension. Right? Oedipal tension. Oedipal tension means the tension that arises between the father and the child. Now there is no Audible tension, whatever the explanation that has been given by Sigmund Freud doesn't exist. So here he tries to critique the Sigmund Freud's Oedipus complex, arguing that psychosexual development is culturally constructed. So he says that socialization differs across cultures. Therefore, Oedipal tension is not universal and it's not applicable to all the societies. Oedipal tension, that means the tension between the Oedipus and the sun that is there, right? That is not applicable to all the societies. That means Freudian concepts are not universally applicable. So the Freudian concepts are not universally applicable. So socialization process vary across societies. Then the sexual life of savages. The other work is Sexual Life of Savages. This work is in 1929. 1926 you have Crime and Custom. Okay. Then after that you have Sex and Repression in 1927. Then in 1929 the Sexual Life of Savages. So here he tried to give the detailed ethnographic study of courtship, marriage and sexuality in Tobriand Islanders. And he aimed to debunk Western moral assumptions that are there. So Western moral assumptions are not used. So whatever the Western morality that is there, he says that it's not universal. Societies construct their own ethical frameworks. Here people are open to sexual relationships before marriage. Premarital sexual relationships are allowed here. And they openly talk about the aspect of sex and they integrate sexuality into daily life and they show open attitude towards the sexual exploration before marriage. And he noticed that in mate selections they use the sexual attraction rituals as well. And marriage here is based upon the kinship obligations, not on the romantic love. So among these people, what he observed is that marriage is based upon kinship obligations, not on the romantic love. And thereby he tried to say that Western people, whatever the notion they have, that is not universal and people construct their own ethical frameworks. This is the work in 1929 and later in 1935, the Coral Gardens and Their Magic was the work that was done. So here kinship, kinship obligation means that within the kins you have to marry. So there is obligation. Who should marry whom? So it's already established that okay, so mother's brother, son or daughter should marry the woman's son. Okay. Coral Gardens and Their Magic. So what kind of economy did you notice among the Tobriand Islanders while we are discussing? So this is in 1935. What kind of economic practices did you notice? Fishing. So they practice agriculture, that means the kind. Horticulture was the, within the agriculture you have multiple types. Horticulture. Okay. And this horticultural practices. Within the agriculture, you have multiple types. That is, they practice horticulture, and here they involve not just economic aspect but also symbolic and ritualistic aspect. So that means agriculture or horticulture here is not just economic but also symbolic and ritualistic as well. Horticulture, agriculture, both are within within agriculture. You have multiple types, right? The classification is there. See, they are practicing horticulture. So when the term agriculture is used, that means they are doing horticulture. That is what you can write either terms. Horticulture is not just economic but also symbolic and ritualistic. Or you can write agriculture is not just economic but also symbolic and ritualistic. So here the farmers will do the magical spells and ceremonies to ensure a good harvest. So he has said that their economy is not just bound to economic aspects alone, but also symbolic and ritualistic, and they use the ritualistic spells for what? To get a good harvest. And at the same time, they use chants, myths, taboos for what? They use this to regulate land use. So that means to prevent the exploitation of the land and use it sustainably. They use this taboos, myths for regulating and ownership purpose. Okay, so this is what he has observed. Coral gardens and their magic. You have to listen as well. Okay. So now coming to his analysis. Okay, we try to know who is Malinowski, from where did he come, where did he go, and what work did he do, and from that what publications have come. Okay, so these are all the factual things. But now coming to the theoretical aspect, he says that culture is combination of traits and institutions. If you take culture and you break it into parts, what you get, the parts of the culture are cultural traits, and institutions. So he says that culture is an integrated totality. He calls this culture is an integrated totality. Why does he call this an integrated totality? Because he says that, see, you have parts within the culture. These parts are cultural traits and institutions. Every trait will do some activity, every trait indirectly does some function. Every institution does some function, and every institution not only functions in isolation but in combination also it will do some function. So now if you combine all the functions that are done by institutions and trades, when you integrate all of them together, that is what is culture. So henceforth he calls culture is an integrated totality. So institutions work as a small unit for the fulfillment of human needs. So what he says is that if you look at an institution functions as a small unit for the fulfillment of human needs. So he says that every trait that exists does some function, and these functions are to meet the needs of an individual. So we have seen in the premises that there is system, within the system you have part, each part does some activity, that is function. So here this is culture is a system, within that you have parts, those are traits and institutions, and each of them is doing function. Why is the trait functioning according to him? For surviving. Why is it surviving? To function. So what function is it doing? To meet the needs of an individual. Institution, what function is it doing? It is meeting the needs of an individual. So institutions act as a small unit. So when all the institutions together, if you look at individually and in combination with the others, they achieve functional integration. Okay, so he tries to analyze the institution. Okay, he talked about two things. One, the culture is an integrated whole and functionally unified, functionally integrated. So every trait does some function, and that function is nothing but meeting the needs of an individual. So he has analyzed two things: analysis of institution and analysis of needs. So he said every institution functions as a small unit to meet the needs of an individual. So the first step one has to do, according to Malinowski, is to analyze the structure of the culture and its parts. So its parts are nothing but institutions. Now you should analyze institution. What is the primary thing according to Malinowski? You have culture, you have parts. Now analyze these parts. What are the parts we have seen, right? Traits and institution. So now analyze the institution. That is what he is doing. So within the institution, he said that every institution has got a charter. What is charter? Charter is nothing but which justifies the existence of that particular institution. Then you have norms. Norms are nothing but formally accepted rules or behavior. Okay, so every institution has got norms. Then every institution has got personnel, and these people use the material aspects. So within the institution you have material aspects also, and then these material aspects do some activities, and these activities does the function, right? So you take any institution, Yesterday we took bank, right? So bank, whenever you go to bank, what do you see? You see that boards, right? Whom to contact if you have problem, where you should express your grievance, what are your rights, okay? What are their responsibilities? So those all things. So why they are present? To meet what? Justifying their existence. And there are certain norms or established behavior which is accepted. Then there are people involved in it. So you have many people, clerks, manager, and so on. And material aspects, right? There are material aspects, checkbooks, okay? You have passbooks, account books, so many, right? So those are the material aspects, and these are do everybody using these material aspects. What do? They do some activity. So when they are doing some activity, what is it resulting? It resulting in some function. So every institution, according to Malinowski, consists of charter, norms, personal, material apparatus, activities, and function. So you take marriage. Within the marriage, what is the charter? Justification for the continuation of human existence, reproduction, meeting the sexual needs of an individual, right? So norms, there are certain rules that have to be followed in different cultures, right? Personal or involved, there are personal, right? So bride, groom, priest, and families of the both the sides, many people who visit the marriage, right? And they have material aspects involved in it. What different cultures use different material aspects, right? In Hindu custom, you notice the coconut and the thread, sacred thread, which has to be tied, okay? And then you have the activities. That means using this material apparatus, personal will do the activities. But ultimately, what is it doing? It is meeting a function, meeting the needs of an individual. So this is the analysis of institution. Then coming to the analysis of needs. So we have understood that institution exists to meet the needs of an individual. Institution exists to meet the needs of an individual. He tried to classify the needs. So first thing is clear. What is culture? Culture is present to meet the needs of an individual. That means it is there to do some function, and that function is meeting the needs of an individual. Culture is there to do that. And he says culture satisfies all the needs of an individual. And there are different needs that humans have. Okay, so first is primary needs or biological needs. Okay, according to Malinowski, there are primary needs or biological needs. Then you have derived needs or secondary needs or institutional needs. Then you have integrative needs or synthetic needs, also known as psychological needs. So he tries to say that there are three types of needs: biological or primary. You have secondary, or they are derived from this, that's why they are called as derived needs, or institutional needs. Try to focus here. First is bio or primary. From these you get the needs that arise, that is secondary or institutional. Then you have integrative needs or tertiary needs. Okay, these are also known as synthetic needs. So now try to understand carefully. Biological needs are the needs that are arise just because you are born as a biological being. So anyone who was born as a biological being, they have needs, right? What are the needs? That means you have hunger to meet, you, sex, shelter. These all are needed. So for sex, you have marriage, okay, and For hunger, you have, so metabolism is needed and not the agriculture. So for hunger, you need food. Okay. For comfort, you need clothing and ventilation. For security, you need shelter. For sex, you have marriage. For reproduction, you have kinship. For movements, you have activities. For growth, you have training. For health, you have hygiene and medicine. Secondary needs, see, one thing, primary needs or biological needs you share in common with animals also. Animals also have these biological needs because they are also biological beings. But how do they meet their needs? They meet their needs by nature. But humans meet it through culture, right? So now humans cannot be isolated. They live a collective life, right? So they cannot be isolated. They live a collective life. So when people start living collective life, there arises new needs. That means you need to communicate. So there comes language. You have to transmit your culture. When you are living collectively, so you should transmit your culture to next generation. That is enculturation and education. Then material satisfaction. That means for material satisfaction, you need materials when you are living together. So then in that case, you have economic system, right? You will tell them how to do agriculture or how to do horticulture or whatever it. Then social control. When many people come together, they are living a collective life. You will see the problems. There should be social control. So there comes sanctions of law and custom. That means political organization. After this, you have integrative needs. So for the need of confidence and feeling of collective being or collective unity, so you have magico religious system. Religious system will develop a kind of unified feeling, right? For confidence, sometimes you perform magic also. Okay. So you have biological needs or primary needs. These are shared in common with animals also. But this is due to collective living of humans, which is not seen among the other biological beings. Okay. Here you have integrative needs, right? So relaxation, playing, and aesthetic satisfaction, right? Recreational and ceremonial activities all fall under the integrative needs. So Malinowski concludes that every institution and all the institutions together satisfy all these three types of needs. They are functionally linked up and hence they are functionally integrated. So culture is an integrated totality and integrated functionally, and integration happens through the institutions. Institutions in isolation and in combination with other will try to meet the needs of an individual. So this is the analysis of institution and analysis of needs and the conclusion of Malinowski. Now comes the last part, that is critical analysis of his theory. So needs theory is explained in the work Scientific Theory of Culture. Yeah, so these things we have discussed. Because it is meeting the biological needs and cultural needs, henceforth we call them as biocultural functionalism. Psychological, so it is dealing with individual, henceforth psychological functionalism as well. So don't get confused if they say what is psychological functionalism. It is nothing but Malinowski's functionalism only. Biocultural functionalism is also Malinowski's functionalism. So this is regarding institution, charter, norms, personal, material apparatus, activities and function. We have seen contribution to economic institution, right? Collaring he has studied and what purpose it is serving. It is not just solving the economic purpose. Okay, so through reciprocity, that means through exchange, they are establishing obligations, social alliances are formed. At the same time, there it is providing cooperation between the communities. These all things we have studied. I'll try to give you the notes of all the things. Most of the things are there, but again, I have uploaded as well in the class folder. So I uploaded the extra content, whatever we have discussed. So remaining things are there in the Word document that I've shared with the anthropological. Okay. So Malinowski on economic institution, he said that Western notions of or Western principles of economy cannot be applied to indigenous communities. They don't function on the principle of rationality, just like those people are thinking. Okay, so they give importance to the social aspects, the cultural aspects. Okay, so economy is embedded in the socio-cultural matrix. That means here economic institution is linked to magic, religion, political organization, the marriage, social organizations. So it is not isolated, rather it is embedded in the socio-cultural matrix. So that's what we have seen, the Tobriand Islands, okay, coloring. So it is with respect to economic institution. Magic and religion, we have seen, right? So coral gardens and their magic, they don't treat the agriculture as just economic aspect. They involve the rituals in getting the bounty harvest. They believe that by performing the rituals, they get good harvest. They use myths, the taboos, chants to regulate the land use and ownership. So nobody can occupy or take away because they use these things to control. And he has given the differentiation between the magic and religion. He said that these people go for fishing. They go for fishing in both lagoons and seas. Lagoons is something safe. They know to what depth it has and what amount of water it has, they're safe. But when they go for fishing in seas, they're not sure whether they're going to come back or not. So they perform rituals and magic when they go into the sea. So he says that magic and religion are also there to meet the needs of an individual. But what need they are meeting? They are meeting the need to overcome the anxiety and fear. Clear? So the difference, he says that magic is used when you know the solution. That means suppose you have a problem. You know this is the solution. If it has been there, my problem is solved. Then you will do magic. But you don't know the solution. When you don't know the solution, then you do religion. Then you go for religion. So this is the differentiation that he has given. So Malinowski explains the institution at a micro level, at the level of an individual, but he doesn't talk at the level of whole society. And he says that culture is there to meet the needs of an individual. There are many things which are not meeting any need but still are present in the culture. There are many cultural traits that are there which are present, which are existing without meeting any need. That part you didn't address. And at the same time, it says that whatever is there, it is only doing something good. That means it is meeting the needs. They did not focus on the change or conflict. So they said every time whatever the trait that is there, that remains the same and it meets the needs of an individual. But we notice that cultural traits change over a period of time. He did not talk about the cultural change. He did not talk about the cultural conflict. Right? These are the criticisms. But In the exam, they have asked the criticism with respect and specific to field work. So when you write this answer, you need good information where and what criticisms has been given. So what happened is that he has said all these things. You have to bring out the realities of the indigenous communities without having any bias. You participate in them, or you participate with those people and try to bring it up. But in 1967, this was the Routledge publications. Uh, the widow of Malinowski, so by his widow, Violetta Swan, VA. So Violetta Swan, she has given the diary to publish. So the name of this publication is A Diary in the Strict Sense of the Term. A diary in the strict sense of the term. In this, the diary used for personal use and it is written in Polish. That means it is written by Malinowski, right? So here there was some mentionings that Tobriand Islanders as savages. He has mentioned Tobriand Islanders as savages. That means which contradicted his public advocacy. In public, what is he saying? He is talking about participant observation and understanding the native's point of view. And what you are writing? You are writing your point of view. So this led to a minor scandal and crisis of anthropological conscience. So that means they were thinking at that later point of time. Anthropology, like what is happening to anthropology? People are talking something and in reality they are doing something else, right? So first criticism is ethnocentrism and personal reflections. Next, so in this a diary in the strict sense of the term, that was the work in which this has been reflected. And next, the sexual life of savages in northwestern Melanesia. The sexual life of savages in northwestern Melanesia. This was in 1929. So there, what happened? Like in the work, he tried to show women are not equal. That means women are subordinate to men and they are passive. So which shows that Malinowski is expressing his perpetuated stereotype, not giving the woman equal importance in the work that he is mentioning. So this has been highlighted by Annette Wiener. So we'll also be, she is feminist anthropologist. So in the work, Women of Value, Men of Renown. Okay, Women of Value, Men of Renown, New Perspectives in Tobriand Exchange. The name of the work, Women of Value, Men of Renown, semicolon, New Perspectives in Tobriand Exchange. There she has highlighted and criticized the Malinowski that he has expressed sexist or sexism and gender representation in biased manner, right? So that is the thing. And methodological shortcomings are also seen because when studying the coral gardens and Tobriand Islands monograph that has been written, he admitted that coral gardens and their magic, I told you there is a work, right? So in 1935. So when he has written that monograph, there he has admitted that lot of things got changed and empirical facts. Natives have changed a lot and got transformed by European influences. He himself has admitted, but he did not mention it. So the colonial influences that has been present on those Tobriand Islands. So he tried to be Eurocentric in nature, right? Ignoring the influence. So methodological shortcomings and the colonial context is not mentioned. So these are the drawbacks or the criticisms to the Malinowski's fieldwork that he has conducted. Right? So with this, we are done with Malinowski's functionalism. Are you clear what we have done? I'll try to just quickly recap what we have done. First, introduction. What is the introduction? It is evolved in reaction to the classical evolutionist and diffusionist theories, which try to focus on the past, okay, and which use the unscientific methods to talk about. So it wanted the shift from the past to the present, highlighting from the diachronic to synchronic approach, focusing on the function and stability of the societies currently rather than understanding of the past. So historical background and methodology. So in methodology, you will talk about the synchronic approach and the fieldwork method that is used to get the evidence, and in the historical background influenced by the French sociologist, analogy of organism to society, and emphasis on the function and the functional aspect. Malinowski and Radcliffe Brown has come up with functionalism in anthropology. Okay, so this is the historical background. Methodology, I told you, right? What is the methodology? What approach? Synchronic approach, right? Synchronic approach means studying right now what is it present rather than focusing on the past and trying to understand what function it is doing now. So how did they do? What method did they use? They used the fieldwork method, right? And Malinowski, used the participant observation method as well. So after methodology, then you have basic premises. What are the basic premises? They use this analogy. They said so it is like a system, social system or cultural system. They have parts, and each parts are related to one another. They are not isolated. They are related to one another, and every part does some activity, that is function. So every part within the system does some function, and they are related to one another. If you disturb one part, it will affect the other. So they took this as a basic premise, and here he saw culture as a whole, and within the culture you have parts. Those parts are cultural traits and institutions, and they are there to meet the needs of an individual. And he says culture as an integrated whole, right, and functionally integrated. So this is what he talks about, basic premises. Then he talks about the culture. What is culture? Culture as an integrated whole. Then he talks about the analysis of institution and analysis of needs. Then he talks about the Tobriand Islanders, because of his long work from 1915 to 1918, he has done the various publications, right? So Argonauts of Western Pacific, custom and crime in the savage societies, sex and repression in savage societies. Then you have coral gardens and their magic. So these all things will talk about different aspects. Okay. So Tobriand Islanders highlight the fieldwork, and Argonauts of the Western Pacific emphasizes on the colouring and the social organization and the social control how they establish. So their basic things are mentioned, but in detail you notice in separate works that have been published. And then coming to criticism, here the focus is on the individual level. You are talking at the micro level. You did not talk about the function that trades and institutions do to the society as a whole, not just to the individual. At the same time, you are always talking about the constant thing. You did not talk about the change, right? You did not talk about the change and conflict, right? You said the circular argument. Why is the trade present? To survive. Why is it surviving? To exist. So you are making circular argument. You are not giving correct answer to it. So these are the criticisms. And with respect to fieldwork, we have seen first is ethnocentric attitude, calling them as savages, a diary in the strict sense of the term, right? So that was the work. That was the diary given by Vanetta Swan to the Routledge publications that is published with this name, and then Annette Wiener try to highlight the sexist attitude and the gender representation where the woman is considered as passive and subordinate to men, where the equal importance is not given. And then in the Coral Gardens and their magic, the colonial context and the methodological issues that are there has been highlighted. So these are all the things related to the criticism of his fieldwork that has been done. You can write normal criticism as well, but when you write criticism to fieldwork, then you need a detailed understanding. So that I've already given in the notes. I have uploaded there, so you can go through and you can note down. But this is the overall contribution of Malinowski. So despite multiple limitations that his approach of fieldwork has, but he is the one who has set the standard for anthropology with participant observation. Today, every discipline borrows this participant observation technique and fieldwork method to understand the things clearly. So, fieldwork has been a game-changing thing with participant observation, has been game-changing thing for anthropology, and it has taken anthropological discipline to the next level. So his contributions has been immense, though most of the things today is not appreciated. Today we cannot appreciate the contributions of Malinowski, but on a broader level, his approach has given new sense of thought to anthropological theories and anthropological discipline altogether. Okay, so this is with respect to Malinowski, and if you have any doubts, you can ask.